Hello and welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be having a quick little chat about Highmaul and my general impressions of the raid, now that it's actually out in the live game. I had played a little bit of it back in beta, but not really enough to get a proper feel for things. And of course, now that we're actually in-game, things like gearing and us actually playing our own characters are all factors. So in terms of my own personal progression, I've done from Kargath, Butcher, Brackenspore, and Tectus. All in normal mode, though my guild will be starting heroics in the new year. Basically, I think we're just kind of chilling out for December, and then we're really going to jump into it once January rolls around. And I think that this is actually one of the strongest initial raids that Blizzard have done. And I actually think that there's a really just relevant discussion to go on here if we compare Highmaul to the very first raids of Cataclysm. Now, of course, the likes of Magma, the Robot People, Halphus, and all those guys, they weren't particularly crazy hard or anything, but mechanically there was a bit more going on, I suppose, and there was just a bit more difficulty than there really is right now with Highmaul. And then, of course, Highmaul has got normal mode, aka Flex, which is just that little bit easier. And I think that this has all just meant that it's very accessible to get into raiding. Another point, actually, about the Cataclysm raids is that they sort of brought 10-player difficulty up to the level of 25, and it was pretty hard, in terms of the actual tuning and balancing. And if we actually look at the numbers for Cataclysm, that was really when the big decline of WoW started to happen. Raiding was less accessible, the first tier of Cataclysm didn't do a very good job of providing a nice little teaching and learning place for raiding, and it kind of all went downhill from there. And then they released Dragon Soul, which sort of sucked. Not really a good way to finish it off. But let's just contrast that to Highmaul. Now, specifically on normal mode, if we look through the bosses, you start off with Kargath Bladefist. Now, what does Kargath do? What does he teach people? He teaches people about movement. He teaches people about, kiting and fixates and all that stuff. Let's go on to the next guy, Butcher. What does Butcher teach you? Coordination, right? Managing the stack sizes and all that stuff. I always just go for the strat that I talked about in my guide, and I'm always one of the ranged people who involves controlling the stack sizes, and I just find that to be an extremely intense and fun fight. I absolutely love it. Then if we move on to, say, Brackenspore, that teaches people about target switching. It also teaches them about movement, and there's a lot going on there for the healers, but it's still a relatively simple fight. And then with Tectus is easy. It's simple, it's easy to understand. It's just a matter of executing. And what does that fight teach people? Well, it teaches you about movement, it teaches you about coordination, it teaches you about not kiting the crap over your friends, and various other things. I think that these first four bosses are tuned in such a way that it's easy enough for them to be killed, but only if you actually complete the mechanics correctly, and the mechanics, I think, are just well designed for teaching people. When you combine this encounter design with the presence of the group finder and all that stuff, it basically means that this is a really, really accessible initial raid for people to get into, and I think that is so important and so good. One of the problems that we've had in past expansions is that, well, one of the problems we always have, I suppose, is that just you get a decent raiding population at the very start, and that just dwindles over time. I think what's going to happen here is subsequent raids will have a decent raid population because of the group finder and various things like that. Also, I think that Highmaul is going to be extremely successful in getting people into raiding, so I think we're going to start off with an extremely healthy raiding population. Now, I know that all these ideas of learning and accessibility are often kind of scary buzzwords when it comes to games, because often a lot of really, really fun things are just stripped out in the name of being streamlined or the name of being accessible. And I don't think that Blizzard have done it this time. This is the very first raid tier of this expansion, and this is the very first raid of that tier. I can say from beta experience the Blackrock Foundry is pretty mental in a lot of places, so it's certainly okay for Highmaul to be easy enough, and there's plenty of room for lots of easy bosses like Kargath, Brackenspore and friends that teach people. There's lots of room for that, and I think we're going to reap the rewards of a better raiding populace once it moves into Blackrock Foundry. I mean, hell, even if we compare this to Mogashan Vault, I think this is definitely a better raid. I mean, Stone Guardians was okay, but I don't think it was a particularly good first boss of a raid, and I think Blizzard even said that themselves. The next guy, though, I thought was pretty fun. The Troll Dude was a little bit iffy, I think, as a third boss. Certainly, I think something like Tectus or Brackenspore mechanically is a bit more fitting for a very early boss. And then you've got the likes of Elgalon, who, again, I think maybe was not that well suited so early on in the tier. Though that said, Elgalon was actually one of my favourite encounters from that tier. I just thought it was wonderful. Of course, I suppose Heart of Fear was also just not that fun. In my opinion anyway, I know that's probably a bit of a big sweeping statement, but still, I didn't really like Heart of Fear. And when I compare what I did of Heart of Fear, which was all of it on normal, when I compare that to even what I've done from the LFR of Blackrock Foundry, which I know isn't a perfect look, but at least in the beta did show mechanics. And it's also just important to note that in the beta, LFR was tuned a lot harder than it currently is. But even just based off that, I think I definitely feel a bit more positive about Blackrock Foundry than I did about Heart of Fear. Really, between the two of them, I just think that this is a great start for raiding. Now, as well as all that stuff, I think it's also been really nice from a guild level this time around. It's basically just because of the flexible system. Now, I didn't really use flex that much back in Siege because our guild was raiding normals and that was fine. But now that we're just using the flex system, it is awesome. Like, it's really, really handy. Anytime, you know, there's a raid going on, people can just pop up, say, hey, I'm up for raiding, and even if there's 17 people that arrive, you can all go and raid. If there's 14 people, again, you're fine, as long as your comp isn't too bad. And that, I think, really is going to help out a lot of guilds. And lots of those kind of friends and family style guilds, I think, are going to really just find this to be an excellent starting tier. Of course, one of the best benefits of this is it will help guilds grow into larger sizes, so I think that whole flexible system will perhaps mitigate the whole Mythic being a fixed 20-player thing, or at least hopefully it will do that, but it just provides more room to grow, it's a bit more chilled, relaxed, and, well, flexible. Also, the loot-based lockout's worth talking about. I really like the loot-based lockout because, once again, it's flexible, you can do what you want. If your guild wants to do the first 3 bosses and then switch up to heroic mode, and maybe kill Kargath for a shot at that loot table on heroic, then you can. I like that. I just like, you know, a guild being able to just have this feeling of being able to do whatever they want. I suppose one downside of it is that it could promote guilds just doing twice the content, a little bit like, say, the Trial of the Grand Crusader problem that we had back in Wrath of the Lich King, where you kind of be doing multiple difficulty levels all the time because you really needed that gear. Still, I think it's worth it though, the trade-off's worth it. Really though, I think that's all my main points. I know this is a bit of a messy video, but hey, I suppose opinion videos often are that way. Basically, this is just a really nice tier in my opinion. I'm having a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be great for the game. So that's really it for the video. Let me know what your experiences of Highmaul are. I'd also be particularly interested in hearing what it's like on Mythic difficulty, just from people's personal perspectives, as much as watching top streams kind of, you know, shows a little bit of that. It would be cool just to see what you guys all think. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.